Now, before we talk too much about the bombs flying at the cinema, we have to talk about the ones that kind of did over the weekend over empty facilities and the ones that will not be flying because thankfully we have in fact averted World War III because there is now apparently a big old ceasefire between Israel and Iran that was orchestrated by Trump. And yeah, when we were talking about this at the same time last week, I do believe I floated the idea that I really hope the way that Trump is handling Tucker Carlson, Tulsi Gabbard, and all of his strongest supporters is in an attempt to throw everybody off the trail that he is in fact working on something. He doesn't really want to be tipping his hat in the way that he's moving towards peace, showing strength and leadership through the threat of an attack as opposed to strike first, ask for forgiveness later. And lo and behold, this is where we're at. Thank God for that, because I don't think this is like, it's interesting, right? Like I said, I don't really want to do an entire video on this, mostly because it's like, okay, cool, we're not going to be getting war, and here's a couple of things that may or may not be happening. Not really enough substance for that. And frankly, whenever I do a video that's like, yeah, you know, we should probably stop simping so hard for foreign country A, tends to tank things on the channel for like a month. So yeah, as I'm just finally getting out of those doldrums, thank Christ, I'm not really keen on upsetting the apple cart for saying, oh yeah, I don't really want to go die for a foreign country. But addressing it right now and saying, oh, thank God that ended up being the case, that yeah, Trump was working to orchestrate some stuff, and now that there's going to be a ceasefire, it's not like there isn't like a history of those things never really working out all that well. But hey, you know, we try every once in a while, and we'll hope maybe this will go ahead and buck the trend, right? That yes, the 12-day war, as Trump has titled it here over on his Truth Social post. I mean, I guess he really wanted his own branding for this conflict, okay? He's looking around the world to everybody else and thinking, you know what, we could all use a good sequel. Even to the 11-day war, we can now have the 12-day war, and that's what we can call it. So Netanyahu can simultaneously get, you know, he can take a W on this one, whereas 6, 12, 18 months down the line, as is normally his case, he can come out and say, oh yeah, Iran is minutes away from having nuclear war, and the whole parable of the dog with a thorn in its paw, it doesn't hurt so much that he wants to fix it, he just wants it around there, he can bitch and complain about it. So yeah, he can continue on fear-mongering in the future, but in the time being, everything's going to be all fine and dandy. So yes, this summer, we don't have to worry about the bombs flying overhead. We can just simply wait a couple of weeks for some of the bigger ones to hit the cinema, because to pull this up, I think like one last time, potentially, because now as it says, like, we know July is going to be busy. Okay, a Jurassic World Rebirth just did the video on that one over the weekend, and with Superman for some of those upcoming projections, and holy crap, the things aren't looking all that great. I'll be very interested to follow up specifically for Superman, because we've seen those projections just within a couple of weeks, you know, go down quite precipitously. And then of course, to get a more clearer picture for Jurassic World Rebirth, as that's going to be the first one up, and that'll be quite telling. And we've had very, 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 very early predictions for Fantastic Four, but as it takes its actual first steps from Box Office Pro and your other prediction sites, yeah, that's going to be interesting to track as well. But the last one to release on this top 10 most anticipated 2025 summer movies list to drop came out over this past weekend. And yes, we're talking about number 7 in the playbooks, but number 1 in your hearts, but not number 1 over the weekend, was in fact 28 Years Later. And it's a film that people have, well, they've had their eye on, even if you're not a horror film fan, even if you're not a zombie film fan. If you would have seen those trailers when they first dropped, the first one that came out, I think it was early December, something like that. And goddamn, man, like, as somebody who, like, I don't like zombie movies. I'm not somebody who really likes those schlock slasher horror films, or even some of the more highbrow, pretentious ones, you know. 28 Days Later, your first few early seasons of The Walking Dead, where it's, oh, isn't it so great? Oh, this isn't really about the mindless horde of zombies. It's more or less, it's man's inhumanity to man that is just always at the center of this stuff. It's like, it's just never really grabbed me. And it really did kind of add to my whole state of being put off from the movies, because if you can cast your mind back to the early 2010s, like, what was prior to the superhero genre boom, okay, what was the last big trend in Hollywood? Well, it was zombie movies, okay? You had World War Z, I Am Legend, Pride and Prejudice, and zombies. Like, that shit was everywhere. Because it was never really something that appealed to me. I was already starting to get put off from new media. And then by the time Dark Knight Rises came around, I'm like, okay, I'm kind of done with all of this stuff. So yeah, it ended up, even though I didn't see it, contributing to my overall new media fatigue, if we're going to be completely honest. So yeah, to have the third movie in this franchise, I guess, kind of, sort of, depending on how they want to move things going forward, because there's going to be one more movie or potentially a trilogy of new movies stemming out of 28 years later, because the sequel that is going to be directed by Nia DaCosta of the Marvels fame, yeah, a fucking enlightened choice that you have right there, that is right now tentatively titled and scheduled to come out in January. Okay, so it's going to be a pretty quick turnaround on this one, but it's already called, yes, 28 years later, The Bone Temple, which, if you watch, or if you've watched any coverage of 28 years later, it's been quite mixed so far. I think that it leans a lot more negative as opposed to positive, because for every person that I see like it, I think like 3 or 4 people dislike or outright hate the film. I don't think it's gonna age all that well as more people start to really think through it and get past the whole emotional rush of, oh, I really like the whole father-son dynamic, until the character assassinate the father on multiple levels. They reassess how cringe the birthing scene was, and then really think through drugging the kid and robbing him of his agency in the climactic choice of the film. I won't spoil anything, but holy crap. The way that they handled that was absolutely insane. But yes, there are a couple of takeaways from this film on the weekend from the people that's seen it, other than, yes, okay, it's kind of a tale of 2, or depending on your perspective, 3 different movies from the people that weren't that keen on it. They'll tell you that the first film is decent. There's some setup there that you could do something with, but then it ends up squandering a bunch of its potential in movies 2 and 3. But the only real takeaways from this is just how absolutely baffling the final scene was, where you have Jimmy Savile's Power Rangers turn up. That's not a spoiler. That's what happens. It's going to make no sense out of context, but it's exactly what happens to close the movie, and people really being put off by that ending, as opposed to, not really being able to process the rest of the film. Just something so jarring at the end of it ends up sucking the air out of the theater afterwards. That's what you're hearing a lot, and some people can manage that a little bit better than others. But other than that, yeah, the only other thing is, wow, there was a copious amount of male full frontal nudity, okay, with your alpha zombie just hanging dong the entire time, okay, and given that final closing scene, okay, it wouldn't have been too far out of place to just, if they would have had a high stakes chase with the alpha zombie, if he would have tripped on that goddamn thing, because apparently it was there. It was a flapping around for the world to see, because when somebody goes to a zombie film, that's what they're there for. Cringe female bonding moments over childbirth and rage dong. Yeah, okay. Not exactly a great takeaway from your introspective, very thematically deep film there, Danny. But yes, 28 years later takes us back to the bleak dystopian world envisioned by director Danny Boyle and writer Alex Garland, nearly 3 decades after the events of the first film. Now, here's another thing. Listening to several reviews and breakdowns of this, it's like, the film would have been better served if it was just not attached to 28 years later, or I'm sorry, the 28 whatever later franchise, because it kind of, like, depending on who you ask, it either retcons weeks or it doesn't, because there is footage from weeks that gets played in years, and days ends up getting disregarded in that account. The way that the virus has theoretically evolved from days, it doesn't bore out too many similarities with what happens with years. So if it would have just simply been this island with some zombies on it, and it's a story, well, the story that they ultimately ended up telling, it would have been so much better. Plus, the whole world building thing of, oh yeah, Britain's just this ticking time bomb of zombies, and nobody's done anything with it for the better part of 3 decades. You never, that question never really has to enter your mind. Like I said, this movie is going to go down in a lot of people's estimations, and it's not like it's knocking it out the park right now, because for as flawed as a metric that Rotten Tomatoes is, like, it's hovering around the mid-60s for the audience score, and it's got a B cinema score. And for those people that are out there who are unfamiliar with cinema score, the way that you normally want to rank that, and the normally how you want to absorb that information, is to go ahead and knock down that score, whatever it is, by about 2 standard deviations. So it's not exactly a crowd pleaser, but most people just simply say, oh yeah, I like the film all the way up until the end. Like, that ending was just really silly. And then especially if this is supposed to be the building blocks and there are so many loose threads. Something else that I heard and that I very much agree with, it's okay, cool, like, you want to set plot threads that you're going to end up expounding upon for the other entries into your trilogy. I understand. You want to have set up in movie 1 to have payoffs in 2 and 3. Okay, that's totally fine. But at the end of the day, you're still telling one contained story. Fellowship works as a standalone film, but it, of course, adds to the greater trilogy of Lord of the Rings. Raiders of the Lost Ark, that's still a standalone tremendous film, and many people's favorite in the entire Indiana Jones trilogy, because there's only 3 Indiana Jones movies, right? But good trilogies have 3 movies that can all stand alone. This is a film that leaves way too much ambiguous. Like, how do you get these alphas? What exactly is the Doctor doing? Why is he in iodine, and why does that never get a payoff? Oh, no, don't worry about that. It'll all make sense in the next film. In the next film, where they're going to have even more zombie nudity. Like, okay, if this is what you're worried about, the tepid response that you've gotten so far, you will be begging for the second and third movies, if you even get the third one. The world, yes, the filmmakers created has certainly evolved in that time, and not for the better. Well, yes, the infected are taking on a new and unpredictable forms, yes, including the dreaded alpha. Yeah, and these bloaters that may or may not be in trees, because Aaron Taylor Johnson's character makes so much sense. Like, he cares so much about his son, and he thinks that he's so competent that, he's going to take him out for a rite of passage at 12 years old to go hunt and kill zombies, but then doesn't want to go after him after he takes off to go find the Doctor. Makes a lot of sense, right? God, it's very, very silly. Yes, there's one aspect to the fearsome villain that's grabbing headlines, his unbridled nudity. Samson, the alpha zombie, in 28 years later, is generating quite the buzz for the equally alpha-sized member, that he has dangling between his legs. Long story short, there was an actual nudity because there's child labor laws, and because, I forget the actor, the actor who plays Spike, his character is supposed to be 12, but the actors, I don't think he's an adult. Obviously he wouldn't be, and there would have been other kids on set, so they can't have like real nudity there. So it's all prosthetic dongs. No, this isn't Lewis Perry's actual 2-foot long dong. It's all rubber and incredibly necessary because Danny Boyle and Alex Garland are professionals. And apparently professionals are losing a lot of money, because 28 years later earned $60 million at the global box office on its opening weekend. The budget was $75 million. That's not great. That's really not great. So this thing, needed about, of course, you just do rough movie math, $200 million to break even. And like I said, with all of the word of mouth on this one, and given a week, and even with very soft competition coming up, because it was the only movie of note coming out this weekend specifically, F1, there's a chance that this thing does well, but there's also a chance that it totally and completely falls off the face of the earth. Kind of like what's going on over there at Disney, because, oh shit, they had big hopes. They had big hopes for Elio. Okay, there. Pixar's first new IP in a minute. A movie that has like a $300 or $400 million budget behind it, and it ends up becoming the worst Pixar opening of all time, with $21 million domestic opening weekend at the box office. That is exceptionally terrible. Now, why do I lump 28 years later and Elio together? Well, it kind of goes to show. Okay, and you take a look at just how the box office performed over the weekend, and there's quite a bit to learn from the box office in 2025 this year. Lilo and Stitch is sitting in there at 4th. It is currently on track, and just give it this week and potentially next weekend. At least by this time next week, there's a good chance that it overtakes Minecraft as the most profitable most profitable film of the year. It makes the most money so far. But it might take a little bit longer to get to $1 billion, but it's very much going to get there. And until Avatar, it might actually be the only film to make $1 billion. Those projections for the other films, for the big tentpole films in July, not looking great. And after July, August is death, and the box office really doesn't pick up until November. So Hollywood, I would be absolutely and totally concerned about the viability of your model going forward, because you take a look at this stuff, and in so much as people say, oh no, we don't want retreads, okay, we don't want reboots, remakes, or sequels anymore. We want something new. Oh, okay, cool. Here's Elio. Well, okay, it's crap and it's written like absolute garbage, but you don't even want to take a ticket on that? Like, you seen some of those trailers and you didn't want to just immerse yourself in the world of Pixar once again with a new take on things? Okay, great. Well, okay, for some of the more mature people that are out there, what about the materialists? Okay, it has recognizable faces in Dakota Johnson, Pedro Pascal. Trust me, you recognize his name. He is everywhere. Chris Evans, like, okay, a new cast with some, heavy hitters in Hollywood. No, you don't want to check that out? Oh, okay, cool. But then you also take a look at the slop that dominates the top of the box office this year so far. Minecraft movie, How to Train Your Dragon, Lilo and Stitch. Oh, but then you take a look at Mission Impossible, The Final Reckoning. It's very much stalling out. 28 years later, the third movie in the 28 saga, and it's absolutely dying. So yeah, in so much as these remakes and reboots are still making a bit of money at the box office, their time is definitely ticking. How long before the normie starts to catch up? Because it took them a minute when it came to superhero movies, okay? How long is it going to take them to see through the guise of, these remakes are either, just inoffensive shot for shot, which isn't necessarily the case for How to Train Your Dragon, but that is general talking points that are out there. It's a shot-for-shot remake. It's like, oh, okay, cool. Well, you can watch the better version that is shorter and has more charm and better performances with the animated original, as opposed to supporting these lifeless remakes. You don't believe me that How to Train Your Dragon is lifeless? Just compare Craig Ferguson's Gobber with Nick Frost's live-action portrayal. Or Astrid. Okay, might be shot for shot, but the aspects that they changed are questionable at best and do nothing to improve, and in fact detract from the original script at worst. And then, of course, you have Lilo and Stitch, which, it's going to make $1 billion. And I'm sure that there's a sequel that has already been greenlit, and all of that's going to be wonderful and fantastic. But you also take a look at Lion King. Okay, Lion King 2019 made $1.3 billion, which hurts my soul. And then Mufasa, okay, for as many people want to doom over that, like, it made $800 million. Last time I checked, that's not exactly the same amount of money. That is a steep drop-off when it's all said and done. There's very much a half-life on the current success of Hollywood because, okay, Minecraft 2 comes out. Do you think it's going to make $900 and some odd million? Or is all of the meme value of that just gone and apparated to the four winds? Hollywood is desperately looking for a new trend. Okay, they wanted it to be video games, video game adaptations, but thanks to The Last of Us, dive bombing in Season 2, and last year with Borderlands, and something else that slips my mind, that could be, it could be a little bit iffy moving forward, even with your Sonics of the world. They can continue to, just crank out the slop, fire up the remake machine all they want, but if they're going to continue to chase trends to try to figure out what exactly the audience wants, the answer is looking you directly in the face. Make a good fucking movie. So with all that said, thank you all very much for the gift of your time. I've been Don Consuelo. I want you to follow your gut and get after it. Take care, everyone.